Hi, I'm Greg Dwyer, and I'm excited to be here. I think a lot of times people get limited in their thinking. You know, they have certain patterns and they get in a box, so to speak, and then they see something that is outside of the box. And then in that process, there's this little window of wonder and awe, and at the same time, people think to themselves, well, wait a minute, if this happened, what else could be possible? So we're going to do some things. We have a live audience here, and Kyone, you're here. Thank you for having me here.
Pleasure. Thanks for
And
coming.
I don't know if this is going to work because we haven't met
Nope.
before this. We haven't set anything up. So it's kind of taken a risk, which I kind of like. It's a little bit of improv because some of these things might work and some won't. So we'll see what's going to happen. Before you began to talk as a child, you probably thought in pictures. So you've been working here how many years?
Nearly 18,
Okay. And then when did you take this position?
5 years ago.
All right. Do you remember what you said to yourself when you got the job? Did you say something? Were you happy?
Oh, happy, yeah,
Okay.
for sure.
So what I'm getting from you is that you actually heard a voice in your head. Now you're not so much visual. Now you can visualize, we all do. But the first step, I think, is making pictures. So I'm going to show you something. I have some pictures here that are just very simple pictures. And what I'd like you to do is I'm going to have you pick one.
Okay.
And in the process of picking one, I'm going to see if I can tap into what you're thinking about, or precisely what you're thinking,
Okay.
or seeing. That's really it, all right? So this is 1, 2, just put your finger on any one, and we haven't worked this out.
And the top of these cards is totally black.
They're
You
all,
can't
yeah,
see
that's
what's
right. They're all black and they're all identical, so there's no markings on them.
All right. This one.
Okay, so you want that one. So I'm going to turn away, so I can't see what you're looking at. And I want you to think of a time when that picture meant something to you. You can put it right down on the table.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So I'm going to ask you some questions.
Sure.
All right. Can you remember a beautiful sunrise?
Certainly.
Okay, great. And how did you feel when that happened?
Peaceful.
All right, good. So very peaceful, like you are now.
Yeah.
All right, can you imagine or remember the first time you either fell in love or had a connection with somebody that was really deep?
Absolutely.
Okay. Can you remember walking out into the woods and seeing the trees and walking along the path? All right, good. Can you also remember, okay, think about this morning that you got up. I assume you live in a condo, an apartment, or a house, wherever you are. Can you see that house as you were leaving today?
Yes.
Okay, you can. Have you ever been on the sea, the water? Have you ever taken a cruise?
Yeah, I've never taken a cruise, but I want to.
Okay, what about going out to the ocean?
Yes.
Do you love the water?
I enjoy the water.
You do? Okay, all right. So let's see here. I'm also seeing you're very auditory. Like you say things to yourself, but you probably, oh, hold on one second, let's try this. So think about what you picked,
Uh-huh.
all right? I'm gonna take a guess, and,
Okay.
and there's a few choices here, I'll show them to you later. But I don't know if I have this right, but based on the cues that you're giving me, let me ask you another question. If the radio was on,
Yeah.
and it wasn't your show, it was somebody
Uh-huh.
else, and it was music playing,
Definitely.
do you know the song?
Yes.
All right, so let me tell you a story. This is amazing. I was in Florida a couple years ago, and I woke up. I was at my sister's house, and I woke up, and I'm not making this up. And all of a sudden, I had a tune in my head. It was a song from the '70s, and I had breakfast, and I walked out to my rental car, and I turned on the radio and the car, and that song was playing. So strange. Have you ever had crazy things like that happen?
Absolutely.
Where you hear voices or something supernatural
Oh,
happens to you?
yeah, I keep track of them.
Okay, I do too. Very good. You just went there. Music, it's a musical sign. I put music
Yeah,
down. And
yes.
what did you pick?
It was music.
Okay, now look at this. There's the sun, the walking, you know.
These are other options for the
These are
cards.
other
Sun,
options. They're not
stick
the,
figure,
the,
a
oh, the
heart.
love, yeah, the tree, and the music. You're very, yeah. But you're very auditory. I can see by the movement of your eyes that when I ask you a question, sometimes you do go to a place of inside your head.
So
Yeah.
you're watching my eyes.
I'm watching a lot of
That's
things.
giving you clues.
A
so
little
yeah,
things,
the
yeah.
card, so just to like put a bow on it, the card I picked from all the cards when I can see them, the cards have a boat, a house, a
Yeah.
tree, an umbrella, a heart, a sun, a clock, a spiral. I had picked the one with music.
Yeah, that's really weird. And so did I. So when I walked in here, a few minutes ago, you read me, right? And when I walked in, I read you, and then the audience, the members that greeted me very nicely, I read her, I read the production people. So we do this all the time. We're always reading people. But I really am an expert at it. Now, I'm not saying I'm perfect. I'm not perfect. Sometimes I get it wrong.
Yeah.
But, so that's, what did you think of that?
That was pretty cool.
A little bit of wonder
Yeah,
for
that
you?
was pretty cool. There was some wondering, what else you got?
Well, I want to ask you a question.
I'm sure.
What was an experience that you had in real life that was wonderful, that you stopped and thought, wait a minute, this is outside of my thinking, this is outside of my comfort zone, this is outside of, it's outside of your reality. Oh, hold on. Okay, it's giving me chills. This is giving me chills. I want you to think of a time.
Uh-huh.
You with me?
Yeah.
You're making music.
Uh-huh.
Okay, not singing, because you're not singing, but you're making music. You're drumming.
Stop it.
Wait a minute, stop. No, stay with me. Just stay with me. I see an Episcopal church. Yes? Okay. And you hear something, but it's not inside your head.
Stop.
It's outside of your head. You had a true musical, a woman was singing.
Uh-huh.
And then you asked other people, and they heard
Stop
it too.
it. Stop.
Is this true? Is this true? Oh my God. Now you could have picked any memory. You could have picked any memory. Now you could have picked any. See, if you picked this, we would have to go here. So the fact that I'm able to pick this up on you, it's amazing to me. I get chills when I feel this way because I felt like I had a download of this. What was the music she was singing? Do you remember?
I was at an Episcopal church.
You were.
There was a drum circle.
Oh.
And we weren't supposed to be singing during the drum circle, but when we were drumming, we all had our eyes closed, and I heard a woman's voice singing, just ah. And I remember thinking, that's weird. I thought we weren't singing.
Okay.
And then when I opened my eyes, there was sort of a pause, and I said to the people in the group, before we continue, I just got to say, did anybody else hear that woman? And there was a person across from me that was like, I heard her too. Come to find out that there is a ghost allegedly in that Episcopal church.
So I know we're going to get into the interview earlier or later, I should say. However, I had an experience like that too, and I'll tell you about it. So if you ask me about it, I'll elaborate it. So I definitely believe that there's something outside of what's normal. I believe in the supernatural.
Yeah, me too. I never used to.
Yeah, me either. So pictures tell a lot about somebody. Now we're going to look at words. So I have a notebook, 60 sheets, and I randomly put down words like discipline, multitasking, which a lot of people do. I try not to do. And then what happens when people multitask, overwhelm, numbers, patterns, colors, they're all different, you know. So what I'd like you to do is just hold out your hand like this. You're going to hold it, and then you're going to put the other hand on top of it like a sandwich. And let me show you what you'll do. You'll just simply do this. I'm going to turn away. You're going to hold like this, and then you're going to take your thumb, and you're just going to lift up a page, just one page. Now, if you look at 4, 5, 6, I won't be able to follow you because it's just too much information. I'm a man, I'm limited. I only have one thought at a time. It's usually about one thing. All right, so put your hand on top, and then you just pick it up like this, and you just look at the word, and then whatever the association is, you want to bring that word inside of you, and then you want to make a picture or say something to yourself. So just simply hold it like this, and like I said, there's so many choices here. Distraction, willpower, right? You know, you have multitasking, you know. So you're just going to hold like this and then just lift it up and look at one word. While you do that, I'm going to literally look over here. There's no other camera that I can see. You got a word?
No, not yet.
Okay, go ahead. Do it now.
Okay.
All right, and then close it.
Yep.
And then you just put it right down like that. All right, so does the word mean anything to you?
Yes.
Okay, it does. All right. And are you specifically feeling something when you feel this or see this, or what are you doing? Like, I know you just looked down, so I'm wondering if you're feeling an emotion.
It's not so much an emotion.
No. It isn't?
No.
Okay. All right, good. All right. So, but you can remember a time when you were in this state, or you can remember a time when this was important to you?
Yes.
Okay, very good. All right. So I'm gonna spell some words in the air. One is distraction, right? And the other one is red. By the way, do you notice how many things in the room are red?
Now I do.
Okay, so you had to look at it, right? You had to
Right.
look at it. Before I mentioned that, well, this is red, the book is red, and the lights are red, and that's red.
My logo's red.
But before I mentioned it, you probably didn't take it in. So there was a guy by the name of George Miller. He wrote a paper many years ago. And what he talked about is our brain can only take in a few bits of information. It's like 5, 6, 7, that's it. We can only focus on a few bits of information, which becomes our reality. And everything else is outside of our reality. Because there was a time when you didn't believe, and then you had that supernatural experience, and you're like, wait a minute, maybe there's more to life. So if you go to Salem, and have you ever been to Salem, Massachusetts?
When I was a kid.
Okay, all right, I was there for Halloween, it was crazy. But if you go in and you talk to a witch, a real witch, and you say to them, what's the secret to magic? They're going to tell you. If you go out to Vegas and talk to my colleague David Copperfield and say, listen, how are you doing this? He's going to tell you something as well. And believe it or not, they're going to tell you the same thing. You know what that is? Focus. And that's the
Stop
word.
it! That was the word I picked!
Yeah. So yeah, it's all about focus. Focus is the key to everything.
That was the word I picked.
So whatever you want in life, the key is focus. The key is focus.
Thank you. That's great. I would love if you would mess with my friends here in the
All right.
audience. We've got a mixture of people who are so into this and are totally on board, and we have a mixture of people who are skeptical.
Okay, all right. So we are in the holiday season, and I know we're going to probably air this in the future. So right
It'd be weird
now,
if we aired it in the past.
oh, that's right.
Yeah.
But
I mean, anything
after seeing this, all right. So let's pick somebody randomly. Today is the end of November. Who has a birthday in December, close to December 21st? Who has a birthday close to December? Anybody? No? All right. What about in the month of December? Nobody? How about November? Okay, sir, what's your first name?
John.
John, would you come up real quick and take a look at this? I have a die here, and there's two on that side. I would just like you to have a look at it. Just make sure that it's normal. And here's how you know a die is normal. It adds up to 7. So I have a 1 here, and if you look on the other side, I have a 6, that's 7. And if I turn it to 5, the other side would be? 2. Exactly. So just take a look at it. I just want you to examine it for just a moment. Take a look at it. Pick it up. Just pick it up. Take a look at the numbers. Make sure that they all...
It is as you say it is.
Okay.
Okay.
That's my reality. All right. So what I'm going to do is in a moment, not yet, I'm going to turn away. And rather than rolling it, because that's chance, I would like you to pick a number. And the number is going to tell me a little bit about you. We've never met before, right?
That's right.
You sound really happy about that. Okay. All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn away just for a second. You're only going to have a second, and then I'm going to ask her to put her hand over it. So we'll do it over here. So he's going to choose the number, but then when he chooses it, you just cup it.
Okay.
So this way, when you sit down, because you're just going to choose it, then you'll sit down, and then we'll role play.
Okay.
So you can choose either. And don't let me influence you, buddy.
Yeah,
But
sure.
you could choose one if you wanted to, if
Got
you
it.
were an achiever. You could also choose 2. Yeah, you are. Number 3, 4, 5, and 6. Okay, I'm going to turn away. You do your magic, and let's see if I can do mine.
Okay.
Okay.
It's cupped.
All right, good.
I am sitting down.
Excellent. So he could have chose any number. You could have chose 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6. And you know the number.
Yeah.
Okay, good. So I have the advantage. Here's the advantage. I'm looking at you, and I'm looking at you. 1. Here, I'm going to draw in the air. 2, 3, 4. 4 is here. No, it's not 4. It's not even 5 or 6, so it's a low number. So you did pick 1.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. So here's what I know about you. This is what I know about you. When is your birthday?
November 18th.
Really? Do you know
Yes.
your star sign? Do you know your... Oh, don't say it. Yes or no. Just yes or no.
Yes.
Are you into it? Like, I really am into it. So I'm a Capricorn, right?
Yeah, not so much.
So I know exactly where you're at because you told me your birthday, but I can pick out signs. And I got to tell you a fast story. I was doing a show in a library about a year ago, and there was a guy sitting up front, really like you, really dressed impeccable. And all of a sudden, I got up and I walked over to him and I said, "You're a Capricorn. I don't know if you're in December or you're in January, but you're money driven. You're very focused on your career." And he goes, "Yes, yes, yes." And it scared me. Are you very focused on your career? Are you very goal oriented?
I'd say so.
I'd say so. So 1, if you chose 6, it would have been totally different. You want to do it?
Sure.
Okay, so you can roll it, but I want to see if I can pick up some vibes. You find like where you're coming from.
All right,
Okay.
same thing.
Yeah, I would think so, but you're gonna cover it as well.
Yep.
So we're gonna start, I'll start you off as a 5. Don't pick 5.
Okay.
No, you can pick 5 if you want. I can't believe you picked 1, because I said you don't wanna pick 1, don't let me influence you, and he picked 1.
I picked 1.
I know, he was trying to mess with me.
Reverse
You were trying,
psychology.
you were. All right, so I'm gonna turn away.
Yeah.
Make sure that I turn away and I can't see, okay?
All right.
All right, go ahead.
Am I supposed to look?
I've cupped it.
You cupped it. She's cupped it.
Okay.
All is well.
So, 1, 2. This is a great picture. Take the picture right now. 3, right? And I say because we're naturally. This is real natural for you. So 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, we can't go past it. So when you get pulled over by a police officer, this never happened to you, right? But when you do get pulled over, right, and you begin to cry, no, but I'm trying to distract her. But here's what happens. The police officer is reading you. I travel all over the world, TSA. When I go to Israel, when I go to Greece and Rome, they'll ask you questions. And they're doing a profile based on your dress, whether you have tattoos or piercing. They are doing a full analysis. You do it too. You do it too. We all do it. So I have the feeling you're very intuitive, you're very open, you're very curious, you're very spiritual. And a person like you would not pick 6. In mine 666, that's off the table. We're going to forget about that for a moment. You didn't pick 1 because he picked 1, but you could have picked 2, 3, 4, 5. Are you in that parameter?
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought so. Okay. What else do you want to know? You picked 3.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
Good job.
Anything else you want to know?
I mean, everything else. Yes.
So you can ask me anything. I'm here for you. I'm
All right.
So.
Well, are there any skeptics in the audience who maybe want more? Are there any?
I don't have any more. I came for 10, 15 minutes. I
Okay,
don't know
that's
what
true,
clock
that's
is
fair,
going,
that's fair.
but yeah.
All
yeah.
right, so-
Sometimes less is more. You always leave them wanting more.
That's true.
You know?
That's true.
You don't want
Just
people
like this
saying,
interview.
oh, is it
Will
over?
be.
Is it over already?
So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Okay, so let's back up
Yes.
from the last trick you did.
What trick? That wasn't a trick.
Well, what do you call it?
That was called making a connection with you. I don't think it's a trick. You couldn't go into a trick store and buy that. That doesn't exist. It doesn't exist at all. Like you could go and ask somebody and they'd say, I don't know what you're talking about. So yeah.
When I've read your story, but in your own words, when did you get into this and why?
1972, I was at my grandparents', and my uncle, Victor Riley, who was in show business, was there, and he was a dancer with my aunt. They danced all over the world. I admire them. He had friends, Jack Cassidy, knew all these different people, and I was admiring him. So he picks up a quarter, and I'm 10 years old, and he says, Greg, look. And he goes like this, and it's gone. And I'm like, no way. Never seen anything like it. So I'm 10 years old, blown out of the water, and I thought, how in the world? He wouldn't tell me. So my birthday's Christmas, I begged him, and finally he showed me. And from 72, at least a decade, my whole life was magic. It was all that I thought about, all that I dreamt about. I literally would have dreams. I was obsessed by it. And I would say I was a trickster. I was really focused on doing tricks. The highlight of my career, I worked backstage for Doug Henning, the magic show. I wanted to be a full-time magician. I remember telling my mom, when I grow up, I want to be a magician. She says, can't do both. It's a joke. Do you have a laugh line?
Got it. Yeah, no, we're gonna have a laugh track put into this.
So that's how I got involved. It was one thing that happened, and sometimes that's all it takes.
Yeah.
You meet somebody or someone says something and your life goes. Now I was 10, so I was very impressionable, you know. So, but yeah, that's how it happened.
One of the things I'm really curious about is you are regularly putting yourself in a position where you are putting people in a state of awe over and over again. And maybe that awe sort of appears and then you whip them into the next trick or you whip them into the next trick and their awe resurfaces. So I'm curious what being around people who you are putting in a state of awe does for you.
I go first. So what I mean by that is, if I want you to be in a state of awe, I bring that to the table first. And so what influence is and leadership is doing that in any situation, at work, anywhere. So with the performance, I don't look at it as just something I'm doing. I am literally influencing you by going into a state of mind, and then the word that comes to mind is seduce, but that's too heavy. I want to influence you to come on the journey with me. And if there's resistance, then it won't work. Like, this doesn't work with everybody, and I'm not successful all the time. Like, I have done shows, I just did a show the other day, and it was a great show, but you never know with improv, you never know when you're dealing with real people. It's not like you go into a Broadway show where an actor is saying a line and it's perfect unless they forget it. So you are taking a risk, but the secret, the real secret behind all of it is that I believe in magic, and I go there first, and I look to influence the other person emotionally, because I believe that, well, you connect with people emotionally, and you can influence them. So, does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What brings you awe?
Learning, growing, being invited to a place like this, you know, that I didn't set up. Like I said, you know, to the producer, how did you find me? How did this happen? I was telling my friends about it yesterday, and said, you know, the interesting thing is I didn't seek it out. I didn't make it happen, because I believe in magic, and I believe in willpower, and I believe in making things happen. But when something just happens, you're in awe. You're like, wow, this is interesting. Let's walk through this door and see what this is going to bring, right? So it's kind of fun, right? Yeah, and it's creative, and it's spontaneous.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, and it's risky. It's risky. You don't know.
That's true. That's
Yeah.
an element of awe. Is there some sort of undercurrent of risk that maybe you didn't even know going into it?
Yeah. Well, it's no different from a gentleman walking across the room and seeing a beautiful woman and asking her out. He's like, it might not work.
Yeah.
So, but if you don't, you kind of live a life that's very small. You get certainty. You know that it's going to be this way, but it's not really a fun life.
No.
No.
So you refer to what you do as magic,
It is.
but you're also reading my face,
Yes,
right?
right.
How much are you reading my face when you're doing this work?
I didn't start off knowing this. I started off as a trickster, like just tricks. I really was focused on, let me show you something that will amaze you so that you'll think I'm important. That's a 5-year-old.
So it's an ego.
10-year-old, 12-year-old, little kid not knowing better. In school I was very shy, so it was kind of like my identity. But then I walked away, and I went to college, and I went in a different direction, and I lost that. I lost this idea of wanting to prove myself. But it was about, I would say, the year 2000, you know, that I began to get involved with personal development and study NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, get into psychology, and then I had an aha moment. I said, wait a minute, what if I could use what I know to help people and to put people in a state of wonder? But what really changed it is I became a believer in the supernatural. So my mom died in 1978, and I was 15 years old. And we buried her October 13th, was Friday the 13th. She died on Wednesday. I still remember my father walking into the room and telling me, and my sister, and we buried her on Friday. The whole family left, and I was wide awake, and I went into my bedroom thinking to myself, I'm 15 years old, my mother just died, who was everything to me. And it wasn't dark, and I wasn't sleeping, and I wasn't hallucinating, I don't think, and I heard a voice, and the voice said, I'm all right. And I went, what? And I heard it from the corner of the room, and it was not my mom's voice, which is really interesting, because I think had I hallucinated it, I would have, because I can remember your voice and I can hear it in my head. I knew my mom my whole life. It wasn't her voice. It was beautiful, it was angelic, and then I heard it again, and that was the second time. And at the second time I said, Mom, I don't understand this. And the voice was, I'm all right, just like that. And then I heard it the third time, and I said, Mom, I never want to hear this again. And then I heard it the fourth time, 4 times. I got up, I went into my dad's room, the whole family gathered around, and I never really told anybody about it. When you start telling memories to people, you lose the originality of it. You can't get back to it. But about 2 years ago, when I started doing some shows on Halloween, I decided to share it. And I tell the audience, I said, listen, it's either a hallucination that I went through because I was emotionally trying to soothe myself, or it was real. I'll never know, and I'm not here to preach to you and tell you what it was. But all I can say is, I do believe. And so what happened with me is I started integrating all of these parts. and saying, okay, I think there's more to you than what I see, and there's more to me than what I see, and reality is beyond us, even though we like to think it is, and to bring some magic to the table. And I also believe in real magic.
What do you
real,
mean? What do you mean by real magic?
Magic is, I told you earlier, if you ask Doug Henning, or David Copperfield was the reference I used, or you go to Salem and you talk to a witch and you say, listen, I want to know how you're able to see the future, real. I want to know how you do a reading, real. I want to know how you levitate a woman. How do you do it, David? How do you do it, in Salem? It's focus. And the reason why a magician has a wand is because there's one focal point, and it's all about focus. What happens in our society, and specifically in our age with the digital age, everybody's on their phone, there's so much information. I remember Walter Cronkite, I remember when David Letterman was on television, and before him was Johnny Carson, and people had a narrow limit of information. Today we're being bombarded with it. We're so distracted. In my craft, it's all about focused intention. So this morning before I came here, I saw this before I came here. I sat, meditated. I didn't know what would be unfolding here, but I cast a intention of success. And when you start listening to people like Wayne Dyer or all these other personal growth people, you realize it does come from a field that is older than they are, and they're just making it popular for the popular masses. But it really has to do with intention and focus, which is magic. It truly is. Now, does it always work? No, it doesn't always work. Sometimes you don't get what you want, but you do get what you need.
I feel like I've heard that before.
Yeah, it's in movies all the time. It's all this guy, Wonderful Life. The other movie, Christmas Carol, they all think, if I do this and I move in this direction, I'm going to be happy. And then something happens that's traumatic, and then they turn their life around and they realize that there's more to it. So I think it's a long answer, I think the biggest change for me was a few years ago when I adopted a mindset of real magic, real spirituality. That changed everything.
Because reading faces is part of how you make these connections and predictions, I've got to know how it plays a role in the rest of your life. Like when you are at the bank, when you're at the grocery store, when if you have somebody in your life who maybe is lying to you.
Yes.
Tell me everything about how you use that ability.
Okay, so a real life experience. A couple days ago I was doing a presentation in a library in New York. And I got there early, and I walked in, and the director was not there. So I have a little table, a little setup, and it was my first Christmas show, so I wanted to get there early and set up. So I walked in, and I said, I'm looking for so-and-so, and where do I set up? And the reaction I got was, oh, so-and-so's not here, she's at dinner, she's at lunch, she's going to be back. So it went into a long story, right? And my first reaction was, I asked you one little thing, which is where the room is, but instead I got a story. And I realized, okay, that's where that person's coming from, because, quite frankly, they have to keep their job. They have to meld into the culture of the organization. They weren't really there to serve me, they were really serving themselves, and I knew that because I'm not a 15-year-old kid anymore. I'm not thinking it's all about me, because it's not about me. So then I asked somebody else, and I said, where do you think? And they said, well, you're either going to be in this room or that room. And this woman was a little more helpful for me, but I'm able to get beyond what a person says to figure out what they're really meaning and what's important to them. Now, it doesn't always work. Sometimes I get caught up in my own ego. Sometimes the filter is wrong, because when you don't have all the information, you can be wrong. I'm not the all-seeing eye. It's not me, right? So.
Are there tells that I can learn when I'm out and about, maybe? Because I think we've all had the experience of knowing we were lied to.
Right.
And that sucks. And you think, if I could only go back in time and tell myself and have that voice be clearer. Are there any tells in someone's face about how honest they're being or not?
If they're a good liar, if they're a good poker player, if they're a professional, it's almost impossible. But you can calibrate a person, you can ask them questions, to see where they're at, and then you can ask them another question to see if they change. However, I think the easiest solution is the simple. It's just trust your intuition. A lot of times we think, I shouldn't trust my intuition, but I think that's the key. And I've been wrong too. People have betrayed me. I've had business deals that have gone south. I've also had relationships where I didn't think they were that type of person. you never know. And I think the key is intuition. That's the first place to start. I mean, if you really want to get into it, NLP teaches eye access and cues. Like if I ask you a question, what is the color of your car? And what are you thinking of? You're thinking what color?
Yeah, orange.
Or orange, okay. And you didn't look up, so how did you represent that to yourself? How did you do it?
I just thought of it.
You just thought of it. Did you say something to yourself?
Should I say the word out
Yeah,
loud?
well, yeah, I'm trying, yeah. What do you mean?
That's what I thought. Should I say orange? Just either
Okay,
yes
so
or
that's what you
orange?
said, yeah, okay. So, exactly, so, no, if the fact that I would know it was orange, that would be scary for me
Yeah.
too. But here's the thing, had you looked up,
Oh.
I would say you're making pictures in yourself, in your head. This happened in the 70s. There was a guy by the name of Richard Bandler that studied with Virginia Satir. She was an expert counselor. And he was asking her, how do you read people? How do you help people? How do you change people in an instant? And out of that came NLP, and Richard Bandler came up with this idea of
By the way, neuro-linguistic
programming. Yeah, and all of it, in fact, I was just listening to him the other day, he was talking about eye access and cues. So if you're looking up, very visual. You tend to look to the left and right, you're saying something to yourself, and occasionally you'll look down, you're feeling something. So they evaluated people, and they realized that the brain accesses information, re-represents it, and then the eyes give it away. The eyes are, the window to the soul, right? So, but I think for the average person, and including myself, it's the first place is intuition. Do I feel safe with this person? If there's something off, but I don't know what it is, or, that's the first place to start, I think,
I want to go back to awe. When you do tricks with kids present,
Okay,
do
go.
you?
I have, when I was a kid, when I was 15,
Yeah.
I did shows, that's how I got started, I did birthday shows. But what are you gonna ask me, like, is it
Well-
appropriate for them?
Well, let me actually go to a slightly different,
Yeah.
It's funny, now that I'm talking, I'm aware of where I'm looking, and that you're watching me look, and then I keep looking
Oh,
around.
no, I'm not thinking that at all. No, I'm not.
That's all me.
I'm not, yeah,
But,
which is okay.
yeah.
It's funny how we tell ourselves stories. But no, yeah.
I know, right? Look
Yeah.
at me thinking,
No,
overthinking
there's
everything.
no judgment, no,
Gotta go.
I'm
You
here
can judge
with-
me anyway.
No. So kids in the audience. right?
Actually, I'm gonna pivot.
Okay,
Hold
please. Now I am reading it.
Okay. You get a lot of reactions
Yes.
to what you do. Like you saw me, I almost wanted to like jump out of my skin at one point when you nailed that thing about the drumming and the
Yeah,
voice.
sure.
Will you talk about what kind of like gamut of reactions you get when you do your work?
See, this is what's interesting, and I was sharing this with my friends last night. We had a big election that came up this month, right? You have people that said this and this. And then last night I was sharing with some friends, I know people that love what's going on in America and other people that hate it. And I also realized that we're all living in individual worlds. We have these different worlds of reality. Like if I said to you Jay Leno, I say Jay Leno. You remember Jay?
Yeah, I just
Okay.
saw something with him last night. He fell and
Yeah, I saw that too.
his eye.
Yeah. And if I say you David Letterman, right? So if you had to choose a channel on a television and watch a show 5-10 years ago, who would you pick?
Letterman.
Yeah, okay. So that tells me a lot about you, and you have this perception in your mind about Dave, right?
Yeah.
And then you also have a perception about Jay.
Yeah.
It's not real. It's a perception of those people. And you also talk to other people, they'll say, I really think Dave is sarcastic, and they have this whole story about Dave Letterman. Well, I happened to meet Dave. In fact, I was sitting in the audience many, many years ago, and he pulled me out of the audience, went on stage, 6 million people saw me, went back to the green room, and I had an encounter with Letterman. I had my 15 minutes of fame. The next day I was in New Canaan, Connecticut. The guy brought out a pizza. He looked at me, he says, I saw you on Late Show last night. It was amazing. Do I know David Letterman? Not at all. Do I have a story about him? Yeah. I met Jay Leno in Burbank many years ago. I have a perception of it. So to answer the question is when I do this, everyone in the audience has a different reaction based on their perception of reality. Some people are with their arms closed. I'm a skeptic. I don't believe anything this guy is saying. Other people are taking it all in, and I can't control it. So all I can do is bring myself to the table, share, be genuine, authentic. You like being authentic, right?
Mm-hmm.
See, I know that about you. So it's just doing that and realizing that it's not going to land perfectly, and I can't control it. So when it comes to kids, I try to stay away from them as much as possible because they're not impressed by it. Because kids, you could levitate off the floor and a kid will go, you're an adult, it makes sense. They don't have, they have a different reality. They're watching cartoons, right?
Yeah, and in this day and age, kids have seen so much anyway, it's like, yeah. I get
Well,
it.
they also want to show to their friends, I know how he did it. So they're saying, you know, so I did a show about a month ago where the host asked me to do it at a school. And I literally had to walk in and change everything. I had tarot cards, I had to dump my tarot cards. I was told if I brought my tarot cards out, the parents were gonna protest. And I thought to myself, well, this would be good publicity.
Any news is good news. Yeah.
So anyway, to make a long story short, you can't control it. And when it comes to kids, you have to pivot. Like you just said, pivot a few months ago. Yeah.
When you are faced with a skeptic, what goes through your heart and mind and soul and body?
I was there too. I saw the Warrens at Edmond Town Hall in the 70s. I was in my phase of life as a trickster, and I sat there saying, these guys are full of it, they're BS. I think it comes down to accepting people where they are. You can't change, you can influence, and I mean, not everybody likes Elvis, right? Have you heard that one before? Not everyone likes Elvis. And so, hey, what do? You know? So you just show up, you bring your gifts to the table. It's like anything else, I think. Yeah.
Because reading someone's face and also trusting your intuition and your relationship with the person, whether it's new or old or whatever, do you think if we did 2 truths and a lie, you'd be able to tell which one was a lie for me?
I do it in my show. I'm not prepared to do it now, but I do a lie detector test. There's a few of them where I line people up. One, I do it with a die. Another, I do it with a photo. And the reason why it's too long, it's a long process, but I do it in my show. And you can find out who's lying and who's not lying based on their reaction. And it's been around for years. It gives people hope that they can learn it too. And it's not easy to learn, you know, so, but it is a showstopper. Yeah.
When we feel awe, I wonder what you think about how much we inform that awe. What I'm trying to say is, I want to feel awe.
Mm-hmm.
I think everybody wants to feel awe, or awe feels good to most people. But like, because I am all in on awe,
Mm-hmm.
I can't wait to be there, and I'm open to it.
Right.
Whereas some people, maybe they're in a dark time.
Right.
Awe is scarce, and you know what? Probably won't even feel that great because
Right.
not feeling it.
Right.
I'd love, just because you've been around awe so much, how you pick up on someone's willingness to be awed.
I literally ask people before the show. So often when people come in early, I will say, do you believe in the supernatural? And people say, no. And I'm like, okay, I'm not going to really work with that person today. Or someone will come in and they'll say, yeah, you know. So I do something in a show. I do a Halloween show that I love, and I also do a Christmas show, a holiday show that's focused around the winter solstice. And the conclusion of the show is a mini seance. Now, it's not a full-blown seance. The table's not lifting. But what happens emotionally is the person for a moment or two will connect with their loved one, right? And every night's different. This is why I love it, because it's not the same. It's not scripted, and I never know what's going to happen. But the goal, my intention, is that they're going to feel a connection with their loved one, and their loved one is going to appear in the room. And when that happens, they cry. I had one person jump out of their seat about a month ago, and she had goosebumps, and she couldn't talk to me for 5 minutes. I had another woman that said, listen, I really appreciate the gift. You brought my husband back for about 30 seconds. I know it was more, it was theater, but I want to thank you, right? So for me, that's the awe that I look for. But for me to pick somebody that's a skeptic and go through that, it's a waste of my time, it's a waste of their time, it's not fair to the audience. I'm not here to prove anything to anybody, so I will judge my audience. Any performer will judge an audience. When you pick somebody from an audience, you want to pick somebody that you have a good feeling about, that they're going to work together with you. You're not going to pick somebody that's going to try to upstage you or doesn't believe, you know. So it's, my success is, I believe in magic, and number 2, audience management is really important, very important. Does that make sense? Like, you know, you don't want to pick the wrong person, you know, because it's not going to go well. And every single night's different for me. So in some cases, like I'll say, you know, the other night I was doing something and something didn't work, and I says, you know, this is really embarrassing, I apologize. And I says, because I picked you. It was a joke, it was just a joke, they all laughed, you know what I mean? But you just have to trust your intuition that you're gonna pick somebody that's gonna be a good match, so.
Can you read animals?
I think they read us more, you know. I love animals, right? I had dogs, never really had a cat, but not necessarily that. I do have friends, I have a friend in particular that does that.
Like animal psychic?
Animal connection, like really deeply. I would say the other way around, that, you know, if you walk into a room and a dog doesn't like you, you know, they pick up on this because they can't talk and communicate, so they're picking up on vibes. Are you afraid? Are you, you know? But no, I can't. And besides, how would you know if I was right?
I know. It's so hard to fact check.
Oh, other than saying, do you want to go for a walk? Yes, yes. Do you want a bone?
When you are at a dinner party and you don't really know anybody there and you're sitting across from someone getting to know each other,
Right.
How much do you want to reveal your talents?
I don't. I used to when I was a kid, you know, I was labeled the magic guy. I hardly ever do any of this in public. I hardly do any of this privately for anybody. It's not that I just want to be paid for it. It's just that I want to have a real relationship with people, and I don't want to say, oh, a pack of cards. Like when I was a kid, I needed it, almost like Linus's blanket, you know, the security kind of thing. But in public, I don't carry a pack of cards. I don't have a coin trick. I'm not looking to prove myself. I'm a professional. I have a Halloween show. I have a Christmas show. I do another lecture that's corporate that focuses on how to stay focused in business. So it's my life's work, but I also have boundaries between that and my, you know, personal life, and I'm not showing card tricks to people, and I'm not at dinner parties doing something. I think the last one I did was a golf outing, but they paid me, and I gave a presentation, you know, but when I'm off stage, I'm off stage.
It also makes me think about how, like, if now that this is how you and I met, right?
Yeah.
And so if you and I ran into each other at the grocery store or something, my mind would immediately start being like, oh God, can you tell what's in my bag? Like, oh God, does it tell what I want to eat? Like,
right.
And I would start feeling incredibly self-conscious.
Right,
about you,
and anxious,
sucks.
right,
Yeah.
right, exactly. So I don't do that. And I know some people that are psychic, they make a living out of it. They do readings. And just like a counselor or a therapist, you know, they sit with people and they work with people. When they're outside of that relationship, they're not out, you know, doing therapy at the bank, right? Or if they run into you, they don't have a relationship with you. Sometimes they don't even make eye contact. And the same thing with people that I know that do readings and are psychic. They're not out there at a dinner table giving a reading. And I think that's a healthy balance, you know.
If you could do your work for any famous, let's say politician who maybe has been president.
Okay.
Just pick one. If you could pick one president.
It has to be a president?
Yes.
Okay.
And do your show with them. Which president would you like it to be, and what do you think you'd be able to figure out about them that you didn't know before?
Okay. I'm not very political. I don't follow a lot of politics. The only person that comes to mind is Trump, and the reason why is I met him in New York many years ago. And I don't know if he would be open to magic. You know, his personality tends to be very focused and outcome-oriented. The other person I think of is, who's the person? I think it's Letterman. There's one celebrity that I know that absolutely hates magic, right? So you'd have to know that the person would like it, right, first of all, because if they don't, or they're skeptical, it's not worth the time. As far as any other personality in DC, I don't know that many. But as far as reading him, is that what you're asking me?
Yeah.
I think well, no one knows him, I don't know him, but I would say he does express a lot about himself. There's not that much of a filter.
It doesn't take a psychic or mind reader or a magician to figure out a lot of what he feels.
Right, right. But you know, I was sharing this with somebody the other day because somebody literally came up to me and they were so upset, right? Very upset about our world today. And I was empathetic, I was sensitive to it, and they're like, the world is coming to an end, this and that. And I said, listen, stop for a second. I just want to help you see it a little differently. And this is what I said to them. I said, when she said in the process, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that, she probably can't do that in real life. And when he says he's going to do that, he can't do it either. When you really look at this, a lot of it is putting people into an emotional state so that they pull that trigger, or used to be pull the trigger, or fill it in, right?
Lever.
Yeah, so both sides do lie, both sides do elaborate, and I think it's a circus. However, if I was going to pick, it would probably be him, because it would be in my best interest, because he's going to be there for 4 years. And it would be good for my career, but at the same time, there'd probably be people that wouldn't like me because I showed up with them.
That's true.
They
That's
associate it.
complicated.
It is complicated.
Yeah.
Yeah. Are you sad you asked the question?
Yeah, a little bit.
I know. I can feel that.
I know. It's funny. Audacious has only done in 5 years one political show, and
Yeah.
it was people running for president.
Oh,
Who
really?
were doing really, like one guy legally changed his name to literally anybody else. So people could vote for
Oh,
literally
yeah.
anybody else for
Yeah.
president. But anyway, we've got just.
Well, I felt the energy just go right down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now I'm going to cut that from the final.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine.
So we've got a little bit of time left. You
I
wrote.
won't be called back.
I know. No, you're good. You wrote in your high school yearbook that your goal is to find the real magic in life.
Yes, you knew that.
A
You found
couple
that,
of
yeah.
decades on, how do
Yeah.
you feel like you are doing?
Oh, yeah, and I didn't look for it, but when I was in high school, that's what I put for my ambition, and I was a trickster. And I think what it was is it came out of this feeling of being empty, because I was doing shows, you know, in the 70s and 80s, specifically towards the end of the 70s, and I was getting to a point where I just felt empty, you know. And I've heard this from other people that have performed and traveled around the world, and I felt this feeling, and I thought, well, that's something I'm really interested in, right? So who would know that after all of those decades I would find it? And I think what I found is the gift or the grace to recognize that there's more to life than just what we see and know. It's bigger than what we know. And so yeah, I mean, if I were to die today or this year, I'd say mission accomplished. You know, and it wasn't something I was looking for, like, at all, but it just showed up.
You said your mom died when you were 15?
Yes.
What do you think she would say about what you've done with your life?
I think she'd be happy. I will tell you, she hated the magic tricks. I had this little booth, and it was a table, and it had a picture of Satan on it.
Oh.
Yeah, it was a cartoon, you know. And one day I came home, and she took a magic marker, and she filled it in and colored it. I said, Mom, what the heck did you do? You know, and she's like, you're dealing with the devil, you know. My mom was very spiritual. She was very metaphysical. She loved Wayne Dwyer. She loved all those kind of people. And what happened was, she never saw the change in me over the years. I think she'd be proud of it, you know, and I think there's something to be said about making your ancestors proud, you know. So, yeah.
Any questions? I should have prepped you for this, but you've been sitting here, my friends in the audience, for a while, and you've been simmering on some questions.
Oh, there's one.
I would love to hear a question. Meg Fitzgerald.
Okay. I am fascinated by the word trickster.
Mm-hmm.
And you brought up the tarot, right?
Yep.
And we even know like the magician is a role in the tarot.
Sure.
In our world, you just described, like as Kion talked about awe, right? In a lot of ways, we associate or can associate trickster energy as being maybe dark
Yes.
or negative,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
How do you see trickster or trickster energy, and or is that a part of magic? Is it part of our egoic way to deceive reality for people? I'm just kind of curious. Is like, it seems like a necessary, I almost want to say a necessary evil, but
Right.
is it evil, right? Like, Kion and I even had a really interesting conversation once about alcohol and
Right.
spirits,
Right.
and how that even is a bit of trickster energy,
Alcohol
if
is
you
an
will.
enormous trickster.
Right.
The biggest of our time.
So I'm kind of curious if you could maybe just your thoughts on that, and that as like an energy force.
Right. It's a great question. I think trickster energy is as old as the Genesis, the Old Testament, right? So it goes back. So you have these characters in history. The snake is a trickster, right? So in many cultures, you have a major figure that is a trickster. When I started off with magic in the 70s, it was all about tricks. It was all about ego. It really wasn't about bringing myself or connection to anybody. But Carl Jung talked about the dark side and the light side. We all have it, right? I mean, I could use this for evil if I wanted to. I choose not to. But I also believe in the hero's journey, where there's this process where you're out to accomplish something and you think, this is what I really want out of my life, and then something happens to you. Usually it's a chaos, it usually is a downfall that, and I had it, I was divorced, 2000, I can't remember the year, I blocked it out, but I went through a divorce, it laid me flat. And lying flat on your bed and staying in bed, 5 o'clock in the morning till 5 o'clock in the afternoon, for a couple months, you reevaluate your life and you see something different. But then when I started studying not only Carl Jung, but the hero's journey, I realized we're all on this journey. And so you kind of shed the old skin of the snake and you go into a different direction. You see it in Star Wars, you see it in all of these movies. If it's a good movie, the person goes through a transformation. And I get emotional just thinking about it. It's in the process of making that transformation that life becomes meaningful. So just yesterday, I was talking to my sister, and I called her up, and I said, how you doing? And her husband was on the phone. And she says, you know our neighbor? I said, he took his life yesterday, Tuesday. I just found out about this yesterday. And I thought to myself, what? Why? No anything. Why would somebody, and I don't have the answers. Like, I could make it up, I could try to figure it out. Why would someone do that? Did they get stuck? Were they depressed? Was it alcohol? I have no idea. And I think I can only speak for myself. My journey began with the trickster energy, but then I'm in the late part of my life. I'm in my 60s, going into my middle 60s. I'm at the wizard life part of my life where I want to contribute, make real magic, make connections, and change lives. I went up to Niagara Falls about a month ago, and I did a show, and a guy came up to me and said, thank you for showing up. The conversation that we had afterwards changed my life. And all it was an interaction. He liked the show, he came up to me and asking me for some coaching, and I spent about 5 minutes with him, and I put him in a hypnotic trance is what I really did. I took him out of the trance he was in, and he had tears in his eyes, and he walked out and he said to the host, thank you for bringing him in. It just shifted my reality. So to answer your question, I think the trickster energy is in all cultures, and we go through it. I went through it, and then hopefully you don't stay there. And if I stayed there, I'd be a con man. I would probably be doing 3 card monte on a cardboard box in New York City right now. And I'd probably, what's that?
That'd be a different show.
Yeah, and there are people, and let me say this, and I hope I'm not talking too long about this, but I know people that are still in the magic field, and they haven't outgrown trickster at all. I'm not going to name names, but I know many of these people, and some of them come out and they say, what I'm about to show you is all fake. I'm just fooling you. You're an idiot if you fall for this, and everything that I'm doing is just a trick. Well, those shows tend to close. They don't last, because people want, you know what they want? They want awe. They want wonder. They want transformation. And some of my colleagues that are magicians, believe it or not, they don't believe in anything supernatural. And so it resonates to the audience that, you tricked me. You tricked me. And by the 3rd trick, they're like, I don't like this guy. So does that answer? Hopefully I'm not being like a politician and going on and on. So, but yeah, yes, sir.
For us regular folks.
We're all ordinary, extraordinary people.
2 to 3 suggestions you might have for reading people the way you do.
I would say read books about body language. That would be the first place to start. I have many books on body language. And then also check into the motive why you want to do it, right? So that's really important as well. But I think the first step, an easy step, is to buy a book or a couple books, or even take a course on it. There are many people that have written on it. NLP is another, if you really want to deep dive, NLP. But I've spent 20 years studying it, yeah.
One thing is you see in legal proceedings and court proceedings,
yes.
sometimes the police will say, oh, that person didn't show remorse, that person didn't cry, or that person did this, or had body language in a certain way. And isn't it true that people express how they're feeling in different ways.
Yes.
So, I mean, how dangerous is it to take one bodily position
Yep.
or
Yep.
emotion and ascribe meaning to it
Right.
across the board?
So in NLP, they call it mind reading. They say, okay, so, tell me your first name?
John.
John. So I ask John a question and he does this, and I go, then John is this, or John thinks this. That in NLP is called mind reading, because in reality, I really don't know what you're thinking. So there is a danger of that, and specifically in counseling, because a lot of the NLP, all of the NLP, came out of the counseling field. So you don't want to mind read your client. You want to ask them another question so that they reveal. And a lot of times they don't even know what they're thinking. They don't even know what they're feeling. You know, you've been very transparent. I really appreciate that. But people put up barriers, and so because they didn't cry or because they have their hands in their pocket doesn't mean they're cold. It means they're, you know, holding back. That is mind reading in NLP. So you have to ask questions to clarify and specifically figure out what's behind their movements, body language, their language. Right?
Last thing, you versus a lie detector, who wins?
I think the lie detector. I think I've never had one, never been in a room with one, but I would think, yeah, I think a lie detector would be probably more accurate than I am. Yeah, I mean, why do you ask that question?
Well, I've always thought that you know, the very idea of a lie detector is really about being able to control your reaction
Yes.
to various stimuli.
Yes,
And,
it's your heartbeat, it's
Right.
sweating,
Right,
you know, there's
right.
a lot of things.
and if you're someone who's into reading people and reading keys, then perhaps you'd be more sensitive to controlling, you know, certain
Right.
outward or even inward expressions. about
I
feelings.
would think somebody that's an expert would do both. You know, if you sat in a room, I have a friend of mine that works with the NSA. If you sat down in a room with him or other people, any government officials, or just maybe a deposition, right? And it came to that, I would think that people would use and rely on the mechanics, but at the same time, they're also going to rely on social skills. John, it really comes down to there's only so many patterns that people choose and operate out of. If you look at Myers-Briggs, if you look at the DISC, if you look at, like, I know there's somebody in the audience that's very precise. I'm looking, she's right behind you. Her name is Jessica. She's very precise. She's very analytical. She pretends to be an extrovert, but she's really an introvert, right? So I know her, though I don't know her. So there's certain patterns. You love all, but you also are an extrovert. You love curiosity. You're open-minded. So there's only so many patterns. When I first started, we talked about reds, blues, greens, and yellows. We said a red is a driven personality, like the president. Another person would be a green personality, very analytical, detailed. They start from the small details, then they move up to the big picture. You might move to the big picture first, then go down to the details. Then you have other people that are yellows. They're very connected to relationships, right? And then you have the blues that just want to have a lot of fun. So there's only so many patterns. We think we're so unique, but by golly, we fit into some patterns. And when you know the patterns, you can pretty much read people.
Any other questions? Boone?
Yeah, you mentioned at maybe your Halloween show when you do like a mini seance at the end of it, and I'm receiving you as a very intuitive person, and like obviously I guess, but you mentioned that the woman the husband appeared, and she said, you know, thank you for bringing my husband back. I know it was theatrics, but you know, I really appreciate that, or whatever, paraphrasing.
Yep.
She said, and I'm wondering, like, I know you don't, how much of your show do you consider theatrics?
Okay, it's a great question.
I don't see theatrics in making somebody's loved one appear.
Right.
Like, to me, that is that's
Right.
the real magic.
Right.
And that's,
Mm-hmm.
so I don't see theatrics. So I'm just wondering, because, yeah, I just feel like you're not really a theatrical person.
Right, and that's how you perceive me. But I also am. I used to work in summer stock. You know, I've been, you know, radio show, podcast, television show. So I've been around theater my whole life. However, when I do a show, I never give a disclaimer. There's a lot of colleagues that I know, that give a disclaimer and they'll say, this is not real, it's for entertainment purposes only. I don't do that because I know that if a person believes, they're gonna believe. If a person doesn't believe, they're not gonna believe. There is a very fine line between the theatrics and reality, which in most cases, I don't even know. So when, like I was sharing with John, when I was doing a show last year and I picked a gentleman out of the audience and I says, I have a feeling you're Capricorn. I don't know if you're born in December or January, but you're very driven, money oriented. I went right down the line and I said, what did I do? I said, check off all the boxes. Just happened. It just happened. And a lot of times in improv, like I'm doing improv when I'm doing my shows, there is things that I can't explain. So I'm in awe. I'm in awe. When I do a show, I'm like, oh my God. Like the other day I did a show in upstate New York, and a woman had, and I didn't plan this for Annie, I didn't do this, but her daughter had died 4 months ago, and her daughter came through, and it was an emotional experience for me, her, the whole audience. So in my show, there is theater like you would see when you saw David Copperfield, but at the same time I leave room for true psychic connection and experiences that if someone was, let's say this gentleman in the back with the jacket on was a magician, he'd say, you know, I knew how you did this and this and this, but I had no idea how you knew this and that. And I say, you'll never know. You'll never know, because you'll never be able to go to a magic shop and read it in a book, or because it is real. And what happened was I ran across a mentor a few years ago, and I said to him, his name is Kenton Nepper, he's my mentor, and I said, Kenton, I have a feeling you believe in real magic. And he says, yeah, why do you ask? I says, what you're doing here is not a trick. And so I mentored with him, and that's the one thing that opened my heart in my life. So to answer your question, what happens in my show is a very entertaining psychic experience. Some of it is real, and some of it is effects, to put a person in an emotional state to feel awe. You know? So I'm not a trickster, you know? I'm a person that is helping people see beyond their current reality. So I think my mom would be proud of that. I don't think she would cover out the demon and say, you're such a bad boy. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I don't get trickster energy from him.
You get authentic.
We've gone a little over time, but I still have one or two more questions. Is everybody cool to stay for a little bit longer?
Yeah, cool.
Okay. Mirko, you raised your hand?
Oh, I love that piece at the end there. Thank you, Craig.
Yeah.
But can you talk about an experience that forms your basis for the definition of awe?
I don't know if I understand the question. Can you be more specific?
What is the first thing you experienced that you thought this is awe?
In my life?
Yeah.
Well, my first experience was the coin trick, but then I figured out it was a trick. It was misdirection, right? So my uncle eventually told me. But I think, you know, I've been all over the world. I've traveled all over Europe, been to Germany, been to Ireland, been to Israel many times. I've been on Letterman. I've seen by 6 million people. I own my own life. I get up when I want to. I do what I want. I have the life that I dreamt of 10, 20 years ago. I don't think, and this is wonderful too, I don't think I could ever top the experience that I had in 1978 on Friday the 13th when I heard my voice of my mom. I can't, you know, that would have to be it, you know. And I'm hoping that it wasn't a hallucination. I'm hoping that it was real, and maybe that when I take my last breath, she'll be there, or somebody will be there. Or like the woman that you heard, you know. But that, hands down, yeah, that's it.
I want to know what this is like for you to be interviewed.
Oh.
Because, follow me on this.
Yeah.
You are used to having these abilities, both psychic and technical. Like it's a combination of all these abilities.
Right.
And here we are asking you about awe, asking you in a way like almost like, how do you do it, and what does it feel like? How much are you threading the needle as you're talking with me to both be open about what it's like for you, but also protect the way you do things and the kind of the secrets behind what you do?
I don't think that ever crosses my mind. I don't think I'm being very protective of anything, because I don't think that's what this is about, you know. So yeah, there was a time in my life that's all I focused on, you know, the method, the trick, how are you doing it, how are you reading the eyes. But the real magic, and this is from the bottom of my heart, the real magic is making a connection with you and being in a state that you're in, and then leading you, and then it's reciprocal. It's back and forth. And you could have someone sitting here or somebody sitting here. You've done interviews, I have done interviews, where it's just terrible because it's not there. And the same thing with audiences. Like, I've walked into rooms of people and I'm like, that was an unbelievable show. And as I'm packing up and driving away, I know it's not because of me, it's because of the audience. They really connected with me. So I'm not thinking about method. A kid would, a child would, an amateur would. Because I'm okay with failing. Like, if you had picked this and I said music and it didn't go, I'd say, look, I'm not perfect. So I'm not so focused on a specific method. I'm focused on, you know, Maslow talked about higher needs. I'm focused on higher needs. And it's only because of the people that have mentored me, that have showed me a different way. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Is there a trick that you wish you could pull off all the time that you just haven't figured out yet?
It's never crossed my mind. The only I don't really seek out tricks, right? I do not. I think, what is the end emotion that I want to produce in the person? And then I socially engineer it backwards, perhaps, to figure out, okay, how can I make that happen? Rather than, oh, I have to buy this, or I have to do this, or I have to figure this out. Like, let's come up with something that is going to be the most fascinating thing in the world. And then you find out it's a dud. Like, oh, I spent $2,500 on this, or I spent all of my time putting this together, and the people, well, that was nice, that was interesting. And then I've had other things. I do something in my show, I have two people sitting side by side, and a husband and wife, or friends, or relationship, and I touch this shoulder on this side, over here, and the other person feels it on the other side. And that is so simple and so easy, but the connection, and when people leave the theater, they're like, I can't believe that. So it's the connection, it's the emotion, it's not showing somebody the most fascinating trick. Doesn't work. And it's never about me.
Right.
You know,
Right, that's true.
it's not
yeah, everything I got excited about was about me.
About you.
Yeah.
Because that's what everybody is thinking about.
That's correct.
It is correct.
Any other questions before we wrap?
One more.
What do you think, Meg?
Would you say that, I mean, as I hear you talk, I mean, so much of this just feels like it's really about energy work,
It is.
right? And so would you say that if somebody's passionate like you are about a focus on energy work, we could all be doing what you're doing to some degree or some level, because we all have access to what you have access to. It's a matter of practicing and focus in terms of how you're accessing the ability to tap into other people's energy.
Yeah. So what I learned a couple years ago was when people went to the theater 100 years ago, 200 years ago, 1,000 years ago, they would have an amphitheater, and they'd have a performer doing magic, making somebody float, doing tricks, you know, entertaining people. And one person who I mentioned earlier, Kenton Nepper, said to me, you know what they were doing, right? And I said, no, I have no idea. He said, they were doing a performance, theatrical, but behind them they believed in real magic. And then he mentioned other people. Who was the guy that was in Queen, the main person?
Freddie Mercury.
Freddie Mercury. He said to me, you watch Freddie Mercury, he's a magician. You watch the way he holds up the banister, how he does energy. He says, that guy is a magician. The other day I came across the quote, I went to a show the other day, and it was, the strongest form of magic is music. And I said to my mentor, Kenton, I said, that's really interesting, because he's also a musician. This is something that has been hidden from the masses for years. However, it's in plain sight now. But because everyone is so distracted, we pick up our phone, we tap it, we swipe it, we click it 2,617 times a day. We're so inundated by so much information that we think information is going to make us happy. You can do what I do if you have a seeking heart and you're focused and you know, but it's right there in front of you if you believe. So, but it's always been that way. And I think the way that the politicians and our media and the powers that be keep us all in line, and I don't want to sound like a conspiracy freak, is just too much information. When you are bombarded with too information, you cannot focus on. Here's my question for you. Your first name?
Meg.
Meg, here's my question for you. What is the, and you don't have to answer, and I won't pick it up, I won't know it, so I'm not going to know your thoughts. But here's the most important thing I want you to ask yourself. What is the most important thing to you? And think about that. Most people don't have the opportunity to do that. They don't. And so days turns into weeks, weeks turns into decades, and before you know it, people come to their end of their life and they wondered how they lived. So yeah, you can do anything. Anybody can, as long as they're focused. That was the word you picked.
That's the word I
Focused.
picked. How about that?
That's a coincidence.
Greg Dwyer.
Thank you.
So much
This was a
for being
pleasure. I
here.
hope you enjoyed it.
Thank
I
you.
loved it.
Thank
This was wonderful.
Thank you, and thank you to everybody. Thanks everybody for making this happen. I can't wait.